thanks for taking the time today. I don't know if you just want to explain to everyone kind of what your role is, I suppose, at the moment, and kind of what your remit and who you are, and give it a bit of get a bit of context.
Yeah, of course. Well, I am Sofia Wilson. I'm the head of delivery at CloudMasonry. We are a Salesforce implementation partner. I oversee our delivery teams, our delivery quality. I'm also generally a point of escalation for all of our projects. But I obviously did not start here. I've had quite a long journey in Salesforce that I think we'll get into here. But as of right now, I am the resource responsible for making hiring decisions for our team, as well as kind of organizing our team and making sure that we successfully deliver our projects.
Cool, cool. And I believe, obviously you've just returned to work, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. I had a baby in September. So I returned to
Oh,
work mid-January or so, and she's now 4.5-ish months, I think. Kind of lost count there,
my
but yeah.
God. Good, good. How is the Salesforce world? Is that because I've never asked that question. Is it good from a in that perspective? Do Salesforce are they well versed in people returning to work from maternity and things? Would you say?
I would say so. I mean, I think tech in general is pretty good about that. Also, positions that are work from home, which generally tech nowadays is work from home. There's kind of a mix, and we even have a mixed bag too at Cloud Masonry. But generally, I think it's pretty well versed in returning to work. I mean, it depends how much effort you put into preparing before you go out as well.
Yeah, yeah.
But as long as you prepare yourself well, it's a reasonable return for sure.
Fair enough. And do you once you go off on maternity leave, then do you keep an eye on what happens within the business, or is it, or and kind of disappear, or do you kind of sort of keep your finger on the
I had
pulse?
both. I love work. I really love the team that I work with. I love our company,
Yeah,
and I love what we do. So I cut out for, I'd say, probably 90% of my maternity leave, really focused on raising a baby, which is its own whole thing. But I
yeah,
was able to check in with people, and I enjoyed checking in with everybody, seeing how things were going. So yeah, I would say mostly cut out, but I also just kind of like staying in the loop. So.
fair enough. I suppose a lot of it depends on the if you've got people behind you that you trust and support. I suppose that's half the battle,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, there was no stress that I was leaving and that things would become more difficult or challenging as I returned. It was more that I wanted to
Yeah,
see how everybody was doing. A lot of my role too is the qualitative side of our company. So like meeting with individuals, making sure that they're happy, talking to them about like career growth and goals and what we have set up at Cloud Masonry. And so especially the people underneath me, it was nice to just check in and see how they were feeling, whether or not they were meeting their goals, and if they were still happy and doing well while I was gone. And they were.
yeah, cool.
Great.
And how because obviously I suppose how long were you off?
Uh, let's see. I took off mid-September till mid-January, so I think that's 4 months, right? September to October, November, December, January.
Yeah,
Yeah, so 4 months.
cool.
Technically, I
And
live in Colorado, and the state leave has additional leave, but by January, 4 months in, I was kind of ready to do something else, have something
come
else.
back. Have you seen any changes in the marketplace? I suppose maybe it's not long enough to see that, or have you noticed anything different since you come back?
I do know that summer was pretty slow. I can't totally remember the context of what or why, but I know that like clients were, I think, maybe gearing up for the U.S. election and kind of pausing on
Yeah,
big financial decisions. And so because of that, I think there was a decent still talent pool, but everything just felt kind of like it was on pause for a little bit. Coming
yeah,
back, the start of the year is always a pretty bustling time because Salesforce obviously is closing deals for their year end. So
yeah,
January has been pretty busy. February is kind of quieter because they take off for a little bit in the beginning, but We just have a lot of work on our plates now. So in terms of projects, it's been a lot busier than when I left because summer was a little quieter. And then in terms of resources and hiring and such, I'm noticing, at least with some of the interviews that I've been on, I haven't been on too many yet. There have been a number of resources, a number of skilled resources. So that's exciting.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So do you think obviously with the election side of it, do you think that's now, that's given people more confidence, do you think?
I'm not sure. I think any sort of major decision like that, it's like there's some response to it. I think generally leading up to it, there's a slowness afterwards, regardless of the decision. I feel like people just kind of then can plan their businesses accordingly. So I would say yes, in that just the decision was made. And so now they can carry on and know what's coming their way. So.
Yeah. Because I suppose because the Salesforce world has been very topsy-turvy in the last 18 months. That's probably being polite, isn't it? And again, obviously, we've seen in the last week, more negative news about layoffs and stuff. So what's your take on the industry generally?
Well, there have been a fair number of Salesforce layoffs in the last, I feel like even like 2 years, it's been a lot. I will say for us, our consultancies, we are generally looking for resources that are skilled. So to us, this is an opportunity in some sense. We are excited to see what enters the talent pool. We're excited to see people with different backgrounds from Salesforce, et cetera. I think generally the ecosystem does a really good job of that, where if individuals are laid off from Salesforce, it's such a tight-knit community that really, if you know somebody that works at this consultancy or this consultancy, generally you're able to hopefully get in for an interview or at least a conversation to talk about roles and opportunities and such. And we are certainly looking for individuals from Salesforce, but also other individuals that may have faced layoffs this past year as well.
Yeah. Do you find that quite because it, like you say, it is a tight industry. People do know people, and a lot of people have worked in different consultancy spaces. And do you find that when you go to hire people, do you find it's your network that helps that, or do you find it's external companies to use, or do you someone that refers someone else, or is it a combination of all of those?
I'd say it's a combination of all those. We also have an incredible recruiter. She is super patient and communicative, and she reaches out in multiple different channels. So generally, I'd say that she'd probably be the expert to talk to you about all of that. But she's incredible. I do think, though, there's a fair number of people that will reach out because we've worked together in a past life, or they've worked with other individuals and they bring them forward. So I will say the network is probably one of the largest assets you can use in the like job search process in this industry, at least.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So I think one of the interesting things looking at yourself is obviously you've been through the career from developing your career within the Salesforce ecosystem. And that has involved working in different environments and different partners and stuff. So I wanted to just understand, I think, firstly, particularly if you start at the bottom, and yes, you can go on do your trailheads and you can get started in that sense. But how do you kind of how do you start? Apart from do trailheads, how do you start? How do you know what direction to go? So I'd be very interested to hear how you certainly for people listening out there, how you'd go about that and how you did go about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I entered the Salesforce ecosystem quite a while ago. So it was definitely a different ballgame back then. It was still not new by any means, but it was still an up and coming career, if you will. Whereas now I feel like it has exploded, and there are so many people trying to enter the Salesforce space and working in the Salesforce space. So I do think it's been a little bit different. That being said, I entered through my college alumni network. I found somebody that was
Okay.
working at Blue Wolf. So started off right
Yeah.
off with the network, which I cannot emphasize enough. I think that is probably the primary way to get in, is if you know anybody working in Salesforce, if you've worked with them in other careers in the past, if you have them through, or if you know them through college, that would be a
Yeah.
primary way that I'd say individuals could get in just off the bat with no related skills or no related like trailhead background or anything like that.
Yeah.
I did also apply to Blue Wolf to start, and Blue Wolf had this program called the ABE program, which I
Yeah.
believe Salesforce has a similar kind of cohort-based system, and I know a couple other companies do as well. I know we are planning on rolling something similar out, slowly but surely, though. It's definitely a big lift for a program like that. But essentially, the program that I applied to was a incubation program, sort of, if you will.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
first 3 months, I think the last month we might have been billable, but I believe the first month was just all training. The second month was non-billable time on projects, and the third month, I believe, was billable work. It's been a little while, so I can't totally remember that. But if I were to do it again, I would probably either go into a program that I pay for to do that, or a program within a company similar to that.
Yeah.
We also hire brand new talent quite often. We're always looking for new BAs, and our BAs don't need Salesforce experience. They don't need Salesforce
Yeah.
certifications, anything like that. However, I think the primary thing that we are looking for is solid communication skills, perhaps a history of working in fields that require strong communication skills as well. So project management, like for any type of industry, assistant work, executive assistant work, I don't know, business analyst work. I'm trying to think about all the different backgrounds that we've gotten. We've even gotten some kids just straight out of college with
Yeah.
majors in consulting or communication. I think at that level, we're looking much more for the soft skills and the drive to grow, the interest in organizational skills or organization skills. And then also the interest in technology as well. And maybe there's a little bit of background of like business systems, or maybe it's even like a more technical background as well. So I'd say starting off the bat, brand new to Salesforce or brand new to the ecosystem, I would say focus in your interviews on organizational skills, your drive to learn, maybe even do some trailheads on your own. And then also your network, especially, and leaning on them.
Okay. And do you find people that come through that path where they're coming straight from college or whatever, do you find that they feel a loyalty to stay with that business, or like do you think it adds anything extra? Because I suppose I'm just thinking, people move around jobs so often, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that adds something to the connection, between them and the company, if they're coming in, they're given the opportunity? And
I mean, I think so. I lasted with Blue Wolf for a year and a half, though. So I think it depends on the situation. I entered Blue Wolf when we were acquired by IBM. And so I started with one company. It ended with a little bit of a different ecosystem, still great, but it was much bigger projects. And I really liked being super hands-on and in the weeds of the smaller projects. So I would say it depends. This ecosystem too does have quite a few acquisitions, so I don't think that it necessarily like requires, or there's not like just a super strong loyalty. That being said, if you're at the right company, and this I'd always advocate for this, if you're at the right company and they treat you well and they see your growth potential and they're interested in maintaining opportunities for you to grow, I'd say that that's a company worth sticking around with. You definitely have to weigh the grass is always greener on the other side, and like those types of mental biases. But I think generally, as long as you feel like you are gaining opportunities, I would say it's a company worth sticking around. That's always been my motto, though, too. I do think once you run out of growth opportunities, that's where you really have to either chat with somebody or consider other avenues, because life is short.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you and how do you navigate which direction within Salesforce products and markets to go to, because and when you go to Dreamforce, and I was there in September, like there's so many different stands offering so many different industries, and it's like, if I was on the job market or I was looking for a job, I'd be like, God, do I go into automotive cloud? Do I go into health cloud? Do I go into, like, how do you,
Yeah.
how do you, how do you, how do you, is there an answer to that?
I entered the space when it wasn't so diversified. So I will say it was a little different for me. Blue Wolf was very much focused on being a Salesforce generalist. We viewed ourselves as technology experts. I think we had marketing cloud, we had a managed services practice and a big SOW based project practice. And I think eventually we started to segment into different industries, but it wasn't quite as segmented as it is today. Now there's verticals and clouds based on those verticals, and there's just so many more products. That being said, if I were to enter today, and if we're thinking about how we hire, sometimes we hire specialized resources. Generally, we have always a couple generalist positions that we're looking for. So business analyst, we're not expecting you to come in as a CPQ business analyst, but maybe eventually we'll have you learn those skill sets. SAs, and solution architects, we're usually looking for somebody that's more specialized. But if I were to approach it today, if I found a company that was specialized in a certain cloud, I would consider my background knowledge in that cloud. So if you are a finance major coming out of school, and you've got a lot of understanding of how financial systems work, that would be something that I'd maybe go and specifically research to see if perhaps within that niche, your skill set is in higher demand. If you are a generalist business major, I would say maybe looking at more generalist organizations. If you I don't know, even have friends or a parent or just knowledge in the healthcare system, it won't hurt to have background information in pursuing roles like that and in clouds like that. Because generally what we are looking for is your ability to speak to those clients. So if you have background knowledge of how insurance companies work from the inside out, that's something that I would for sure speak to in an interview. And obviously, in entry-level roles, there's by no means an expectation that you are an expert in how insurance companies work from the inside out. But I think that speaking to those things will help to show that you are interested in learning more about them. You already have a baseline knowledge, and you can come in and already kind of have an understanding of how things work for those consultancies' clients.
Okay. And do you think with the because I know when we first started looking at candidates with certifications, and nearly eight years ago, certifications were a really big thing. Whereas I get the sort of feeling now it is important, but I don't know whether it's lost its need, or it's lost its I don't know, people have just don't take it as seriously, maybe. I don't know, what do you think?
We do put emphasis on them. I've always been somebody that's chased after certs based on the projects that I'm on. I think Blue Wolf had some minimum requirements from when I started as well. We also have minimum requirements. There are a couple of things at play there, though, too. Within the Salesforce App Exchange, you're not considered a consultant unless you have certain baseline knowledge, which makes sense. We need to know that you know how to use the platform before you go and work with clients. So we generally require those certifications first, which I believe are admin and then sales or service. You need both of them to be considered a consultant. Those are generally the two that I'd always recommend people go for. That being said, they can also be the most challenging because it's a brand new system to you. You have to understand the landscape. And there's a bunch of different questions in there. It covers a whole slew of topics versus just one particular cloud or one particular focus. It's kind of the baseline for everything. Beyond that, we do have a track that we recommend that I think at some point we may enforce as well. But we keep it pretty reasonable though as well. I think the thing with technology is it changes so quickly and it grows so quickly that very quickly you will also become out of touch with what's happening. So our goal as technology experts and at CloudMasonry is that we keep our individuals in tune with what's happening on the platform. And as you grow and advance into different roles, once you become a solution architect, you're expected to be an expert on the platform. If you're a generalist solution architect, you should be able to kind of understand what other clouds are doing, even if you're not a particular like expert in that. So we at that level recommend quite a few certs, a lot of cloud-based certs and advanced certs as well, to try to help build a well-rounded knowledge base for our solution architects. But leading up to that, it's a lot about the more generalist topics. So security, I think there's a security architect exam that we recommend. Deployment architecture and lifecycle, that one's a pretty big one. Platform app builder, that one's a good one for automations and such. So we have a number that we recommend, generally around 2 a year or so, to keep people engaged. And then obviously as certs are updated, there's the renewing your certification exams or quick trailheads that keep you in the loop.
And do partners financially support people to do those certs, or do they just sort of support them in terms of giving them time to do them?
I would say it's both. At a good company, it's both, in my opinion. We both support the cost of the certifications as well as giving some time for individuals to take those certifications, all within reason. We're obviously a billable industry, so our primary goal is working on client work. However, in order to successfully implement a project, you also need to know what you're doing. So we always give some time for certifications, and then we also cover or allow our resources to expense our certifications. I think that for individuals that are not yet at a company, the upfront cost is probably worth it to just try out an exam or and hopefully pass, because those things can really boost your resume. And even for employees at a company, those certifications are meant to help you build career capital. They are great resume builders if you're thinking of leaving your company, but also if you are thinking of even just moving up within your company, they're a great way to prove that you are invested, that you know what you're talking about, and make a great case for you to move up in your company. So I think it is an excellent resource for individuals to use to show their motivation, their drive. And then it's also really great for companies too. So I don't want to just put it on the individual, but it's a helpful tool for us to show on the App Exchange that we have expertise in certain areas resources that are certified, and that we are growing and advancing our resources consistently and things like that.
No, that's fine. I've never asked that question before, so it's interesting to get a take on that. And I noticed, I saw when we discussed this before we did this offline, you talked about setting up a weekly meeting early on in your career, I think. To tell me about that.
Yeah, so when COVID hit and we were all work from home, I had gone from working 9 to 5, probably more like 8 to 6 or 7 in the office in New York City. It was a like social, bustling environment, and we went to like silence at home pretty much. And around that time, I realized, I was like, well, I have a little bit of extra time on my hands. I wasn't commuting 2 hours out of the day. And I decided to roll out a group chat, if you will, on LinkedIn around flow building. It was around when flow started to take off. And now I'm probably a bit out of touch with flows, honestly, at this point. But back then, I was working with them all the time. I'd always leaned on other individuals to learn a little bit more about them. I remember the first flow I built, I met with a solution architect at Blue Wolf, and that individual helped me quite a bit with just understanding what was happening. And I realized in that first flow that I built, I was so lost. And after 4 or 5, I started to pick up speed and understand what was going on. And I realized very quickly that it was essentially declaratively building triggers. I got to use logic. I got to use my understanding of the platform, my business analysis skills, and I could, without requesting help from a developer in my day-to-day, build something out for my client that would make a meaningful impact. So it just felt to me like the coolest tool to dig into. And so I started a flow group. it was after work hours once a week, and we started to get traction. Like people from throughout the ecosystem were just randomly joining. I met a bunch of people from Neuroflash, and I can't remember like any other of the companies. But I met quite a few people from a bunch of different companies, and it was just really cool to get to chat with individuals, see what they were working on. Obviously, we have NDAs and such, so like there wasn't as much chat about that stuff, but like just to understand the problems that they were facing. And then I really did approach it as like, I'm learning from this, they're learning from this. It's an excellent opportunity for both of us. We also get to meet and know each other. I met with a couple independent contractors that were working in Marketing Cloud and trying to get up to speed with flows because they had some clients that needed some flows. So it felt like putting some energy into the community really paid off too, because I feel like I met a bunch of individuals through it. I reconnected with my boss from Blue Wolf, which is how I actually got brought into CloudMasonry. So it just goes back to the first point that I made. The network is really honestly the best thing that you can leverage. And even if you don't know anybody in the Salesforce ecosystem, if you're friends with a bunch of people on LinkedIn, and if maybe you don't have a job in Salesforce right now, but you're really interested in a particular avenue, starting up like a weekly chat is honestly probably a really great way to get to know people. I think you'd be surprised too. A lot of people in this industry are very proactive, so they most likely will join. And even if it didn't really have necessarily a topic to discuss, sometimes we'd just build out a flow that was going to do something cool, or I'd prep maybe a couple objects. And we chat about features, or we try to build something, or just keep it really open-ended. And it ended up being a really fun time.
Oh, that sounds good. And do you obviously you've now transitioned into a delivery kind of delivery head role. So in that type of role, what's the challenges there?
That's a good question. I mean, I will say I am not actively on too many projects at this point. So it's just a very different situation. Before, it was very heads down work. I'd get consumed by building in Salesforce or documenting things out. Now it's a lot more people oriented. So trying to make sure people feel motivated, they have growth opportunities, I'd say is one big challenge, not being in their seat themselves, really trying to just meet with people and genuinely understand what drives that gets them motivated, what they're driven by, what they're interested in, how they want to grow. My primary goal is to see everybody successful and to help them leverage their skills, to guide them down paths that I think will leverage their skills. So challenge-wise, I mean, all of it's fun challenges. None of them are problems. They're all just like growth opportunities, and I find it really fun. But probably one thing is the amount of time in a day. But most often than not, my primary focus is really trying to motivate people, get them excited, figure out ways that as a business we can support our business goals as well. So making sure I'm the intersection between the people and the business. I think that's really, really important as well. And then, of course, I think as our company grows, we are really invested in feedback, making sure individuals know where they need to grow and where they are doing well. Probably one of the primary challenges is just delivering feedback with heart and empathy, but also ensuring that they know the areas to focus on too.
Okay, cool. And in terms of obviously CloudMasonry, you seem like you're enjoying it and returning to work, which is great. So where do you see the CloudMasonry business heading in the next 12-18 months?
That's a good question. Right now, one of my primary focuses is we have an Indianapolis office that we are actively recruiting for. We are trying to build out a managed services practice similar to what I experienced at Blue Wolf. So I am very excited about this. And if you're listening and you are in the ecosystem and you are in Indianapolis or you want to move to Indianapolis, I strongly encourage you to reach out. It is going to be that type of bustling in-office environment. We are trying to move towards at least team-based, maybe not cohort hiring quite yet, because we don't want to over hire too quickly. But we are trying to build that team-based mentality. So people that come in with like almost no Salesforce skills, but maybe have a background in some sort of kind of internal business operations or even just interest in business operations. We are working actively to build that out right now. So I will say for new talent, it's an excellent opportunity that is, I'd say, harder to find in today's ecosystem. There's a lot of people looking for skilled resources and people that already have certifications and such. We are looking for individuals that are hungry to learn and grow. That being said, it is based in Indianapolis. Right now, our goal is to grow that quite a bit, to build a managed services practice, to build a team that works cohesively together, to grow those resources. So I'm hoping by the end of this year, by the end of this 12 months or 18 months or so, we have quite a few more individuals in that office. I think our goal from there is also to start to do that in other locations as well. So if you're not interested in Indianapolis, but at some point we have an office somewhere you are interested in, just know that's the game plan.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's interesting because I've spoken to a couple of different people in the ecosystem, and they've talked about building centers in other locations. Chicago was one I had a conversation around, and it's interesting because obviously everyone's gone, fully remote, and then, and that's you're talking about building in Indianapolis with. So yeah, interesting to hear that as people's plans get reforming again.
We have a mix. So we do have remote employees entirely, and then we do have these offices. I think what we realized is that individuals that have moved remote that like it don't want to come back into the office. So there's no forcing individuals to go back to the office, but there is also another group of individuals that is hungry to be in an office with other individuals, learning from other individuals. I also think for brand new talent, that is like a great way to get ahead, because you get to pick the brains of everybody else in the office. You get to see what other people are struggling with. You get to struggle openly with individuals and work together on things. So I think we've realized that remote brand new talent is hard because you're also kind of off in a silo. You're not communicating with individuals 24/7. Well, hopefully you're not communicating with anybody 24/7, but during the work week, you're not communicating with people all the time. People are busy, calendars get busy. So this is an opportunity for us to really start our own sort of incubator for the individuals that are more senior in the office, because obviously it's not just juniors. It's a really big opportunity to grow your career quickly. There are now it's almost like a segmentation of the market. So you've got a really competitive remote market, and you have a bit of a less competitive in-office market. So if you are looking to get in, or if you're looking to advance more quickly, I would say if you're up for being in office, if you like the social interaction element of this career, if you want to train individuals or manage individuals, it's an awesome opportunity to pull yourself out of your current track and try to move into that track. If that makes sense.
Cool. Well, that sounds an exciting plan. Going forwards for the business. So I don't know if this video is going to kick me out in a second with the end of the. I'm a bit scared of that happening. So if it does, then I apologize. But is there any? So with a couple of minutes left, I think, is there anything else you'd wanted to add in terms of just career wise for people, to give people insight into, the Salesforce career, how you would. Potentially, what would you say to people?
I would say, I think it's similar to most careers. I think network is huge, but I also think like the willingness to put yourself out there is really huge. So even if you're not part of a Salesforce company right now, if you're willing and brave enough to hop on a weekly chat or promote it on LinkedIn and see if other people will join, I'd say go for it. The worst case is nobody joins for a week or two, but then you might get a couple people. And if it starts to build traction, you can make connections and you can build your network yourself, or get out and do some of the Salesforce events in your city. That's a pretty big way to get involved and to meet people. So networking, I'd say, is huge. And I would advocate that everybody does it. And then I would also say putting yourself out there, even if you don't necessarily have a ton of Salesforce background or Salesforce work history. I don't think that should hold you back. I think that it'll help you.
Right. Brilliant. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sphere. That's been amazing. It's been really good to hear about your view on the career and how people build that, because I think everyone wants to know that, especially if they're young kids, college grads, trying to get into the industry because it's so difficult. So, thank you very much for giving us that insight.
Yeah, of course. It was great chatting with you.